The Ag Week Soil Health Minute is sponsored by the North Dakota Corn Council and the North Dakota Soybean Council.
Cover crops and soil health are gaining in popularity across the nation and especially in the upper Midwest. At the recent Midwest Cover Crops Council, NDSU soil health specialist Abbey Wick sat down with one of the legends in this field, Dr. Ray Weil from the University of Maryland.
So this is a real treat for me today where we have Dr. Ray Weil on the Soil Health Minute. And Ray, you've been working in cover crops since 2000 and also in soil health for 40 years. And what's the most interesting thing that you've learned over that time?
As I studied no-till and as I worked with farmers, and you see it happening, in the first couple of years, it's not so impressive. But when you look at fields that haven't seen any tillage for 30 or 40 years, and you look at what that soil system is like, it's much more like the natural system in the forest or in the prairie. And you realize what a mess we make of soil as a material, as a system, when we plow it.
So here in North Dakota, we talk a lot about picking a goal and then choosing your soil health building practices around that goal. And for a majority of the farmers here, it's erosion control.
Well, erosion is of course the first thing. If you lose the soil, you've lost, game's over, right? For 10,000 years, human beings have been farming soils and thinking they needed to plow them up and destroying civilizations, one after another, running through their soil resources, destroying it, because they didn't know better. They didn't know how to control the erosion. It wasn't until the middle of the 20th century that we realized what really causes erosion is that raindrop impacting the soil. It's not an obvious thing. You think it's the water running off, but it's not. It's the raindrop impacting the soil. You've got to keep the soil covered and armored, and then you don't have erosion problems.
So you've worked quite a bit with cereal rye and radish, and those are two of the most common cover crops we're using here in North Dakota.
Cereal rye is the most common cover crop anywhere. It's so easy to grow. You can plant it late. It manages to survive the winter. You get some kind of cover. But it has some real downsides. One is it ties up nitrogen.
Okay.
If you let it grow enough to add biomass to the soil, you're going to pay a price if you're trying to grow a corn crop into that, if it's a nitrogen-using crop. And so that's something that scares farmers. They don't want to see it grow very big, and so they kill it early. And then they don't get very much from the cover crop.
What's been the most fascinating things you've learned about a radish and what it does in the soil?
Survey of farmers using cover crops. What is the reason they're interested in cover crops? The number one thing is usually compaction. And that's when I started doing research on biodrilling, which is a really different way of solving compaction. So if you can get roots to grow down and leave channels, they create sort of superhighways through the soil that your crop roots will continue to follow. It's like an infrastructure. It's like building the interstate system. Those are going to be there pretty much forever if you don't mess them up with tillage. The radish really stood out in its ability to do this.
Dr. Ray Weil, thank you very much for joining us on the Soil Health Minute.